Manager and Senior Scientific Officer for NASDAQ. Let's just shorten that. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Martha. Really nice to be here.
Good morning to you.
Paul.
Yeah,
It's
Victor.
Yes,
Victor, sir.
Yeah.
it's good to have you here with us. Now, let's start with the basics of the conversation, which is given that in 2024, you heard the statistics that I did read out. Over 1.2 million people were displaced by floods and 321 lives lost. Now, in 2025 alone, we have heard in states like Kogi, we have heard in states like Gombe, we have heard in states like Sokoto. Not only do we have cases of flooding, we have cases of boat mishaps as well. These are things that can be averted. Now, given these statistics or antecedents, do you think Nigerians' disaster risk management has been mostly reactive rather than preventive?
All right. Thank you very much, Martha. And I'd like to start by saying all life are sacred. And because life is sacred, we feel for the loss that has been recorded so far. To answer your question, I would like to start by saying that Nigeria's risk mitigation measures have been more reactive, actually, in the past. Over time, we've only prepared for when the disasters happened, and when they happened, we act upon it almost immediately. But the good news is, earlier this year, the Nigerian government saw the need to actually basically adopt another measure of disaster management, and that's where the Anticipatory Action Framework started. The Anticipatory Action Framework is actually gearing Nigeria's disaster risk management from a reactive kind of endeavor to a more proactive one. So basically, anticipatory action is something that right from the inception of man has been practiced. You imagine that when building your homes, the first thing you'd want to imagine is having a fire extinguisher, right? Not because the fire is going to engulf your home, not because you wish for it to engulf your home, but just so that you can have the measures right in place before an impending disaster, right? So similarly, in terms of disaster risk management, anticipatory action aims to mitigate or avert the most advanced, basically, feelings of disaster, the advanced, what's it called?
Is it identification?
No, impact of disaster,
Impact,
right? The word didn't come. Yeah, so the advanced impact of disaster prior to it happening. And how are we able to achieve that? In September, the Anticipatory Action Task Force actually carried out their first simulation exercise. And this aimed to bring together stakeholders and even vulnerable populations, basically to simulate an instance of disaster, put in place, in times of disaster, if this is happening, what are the locals meant to do, right? What do communities need to do? What do stakeholders, actors, key actors in the disaster management framework also need to do? So the Anticipatory Action Framework brings together professionals because it's a coordinating endeavor. It's not just one agency. NASDAQ, as brilliant as our technology is with bringing space products, maps to show flood-prone areas and all of that, can only provide this information. However, we need a coordination front, which is the National Emergency Management Agency, who are doing robustly well with their actions to mitigate the impact of disaster. We also need NISA, Nigeria Hydrological Service Agency, who have their gauges placed all across the transboundary rivers, because one of the places that is most vulnerable to disasters, especially in Nigeria, is the river channels. The river channels are the most, we get impacted by flash floods and all of that. But majorly the transboundary rivers, because an overflow of the river, and this most times climate change induced and human induced, basically is vulnerable to flooding. So their gauges help us send signals, alert warnings, just so that we are able to know if the water is getting to a gauge. So there's, if I'm not mistaken, a yellow, orange and red signal. The yellow is to say that the water level is rising, but no cause for alarm. The Orange is to say, okay, it's getting to somewhere where you guys
should
need
be
to
worried about.
be worried. And the red alert, we don't even let it get to the red alert.
Okay.
The red alert is when the incident had occurred. But one of the few challenges that we face as disaster managers, even after creating or formulating a framework that works, even after the simulation exercise and sensitization of these locals about the risks that they pose to basically when they stay in this place, is because of their bias and sentiments for where they live. In Nigeria, most especially, you find people who say they buried their loved ones at a certain place. Their economic activities are planted there. Predominantly we farm. And because of our agriculture, maybe their livestock, their, what do they call it, crops, they fear that they leave and then the disaster does not happen, and then maybe they lose out on their crops and all of that. And even when the disaster is happening, they feel like they can still save it. Right? They are just quite skeptical, and because they do not also believe in the scientific methods. You hear people who tell you they believe in their traditional methods of anticipating and knowing when floods would come. So it's a challenge. Right now, it's robust work the Anticipatory Action Task Force are doing. We are trying as much as possible to provide this product, even prior to time. NICER, NIMET, with their seasonal flood outlook, and other bulletins that they produce, they try to bring basically alerts on short-term, long-terms, when there would be flooding and anticipated flooding, just so that people are alert, aware, and basically ready for these disasters to occur. We don't even intend to just leave it there. There are just a lot of measures put in place.
And of course, NEMA in the past years have done quite a lot of work to informing the people, Nigerians specifically, on flood-prone areas. And many times, even when NEMA and NIMET bring these warnings to various states, states are still reactionary. In 2022, for instance, I was in Rivers State, and then the flood came. I was part of the team that went to cover that flood. And it will shock you to know that in many of the places we went to, first of all, there were no IDP camps. So it means that people were basically looking out for any place where they can stay to get just to be safe, as it is. Now, you've talked about the anticipatory action, the framework, which you said you had the first meeting in September. This is that was
the simulation, the first simulation exercise, actually. Sometime, we had the meeting, the first meeting last year, September.
All right. And how effective has it been, from last year up until now? Because up until now that you're mentioning it, it seems like many Nigerians are not even aware that there's this body, that anticipates that there's going to be flood here, and what needs to be done to either move these people from here to this other place or prepare them for the flood to come. But up until now, how effective has this framework been?
Okay, so I could easily defend the Anticipatory Action Task Force and say that we are working tirelessly, but the truth is, it's evident. We are overwhelmed by what's happening as well. In all honesty, we are dedicated to making sure that disasters are mitigated at the highest measures. But with the impact of climate change, right, anticipating for this flood event seem almost indefinite, as I would say, because we have planned, right? We have put everything together, and there are signs that this will work. And then you do not meet up with the cooperation of people because they have maybe prior information, thinking flooding does not occur in August or in July. It's maybe in September. These people are just here to maybe deceive us and make sure that their plans work. How about we wait a little bit more? And we saw these actions even during our simulation exercises, where we asked the locals to actually act naturally how they will act in these times of disaster. And trust me, there were people who actually refused to move because they felt like there's nothing they are going to do about it. Even not just the locals, we see it all around, even within communities, the cities. You tell people this is a flood-prone area, it's up for maybe demolition, or we need you all to evacuate so that you don't. Year in, year out, there are locations, even here in the city capital, that experience flooding. Right. They know the floods would come. They actually know, right, that it will cause a lot of harm to them. They actually know, right, that they cannot basically overcome the impact of the flood, but they still remain. The question then remains why. It's our ethics, our values as Nigerians first and foremost, and in order to, there's nothing more important than life, if I would say. In order to curtail the excesses, then we need to adhere.
I put in the reactions more on Nigerians. What was the level of information given to Nigerians as well, regarding this?
Yeah, so we try as much as possible to make this information easy to understand. As I earlier mentioned, we try to break it down to different dialects. We also try to make it basically very interactive. We make it simple and easy to understand and easy to use. That's as much as Nigerians can do. You can't really force people out of their living conditions. Compensations are also made. We don't just go and want them to live there. We make use of the National Social Register, and we actually try as much as possible to make it updated. To do cash transfers, we provide cash to this vulnerable population. To
all of them?
Yes, everybody that has been captured in the National Social Register.
How much? Because let me tell you something.
Yeah.
You said that these people have their entire livelihood somewhere, and you are asking such a person to evacuate from where they are to somewhere else. And number one, you haven't provided exactly where, because you heard him say that in Rivers State, they don't have IDPs. Most of these people wander around. In fact, at the time when we heard insecurity, of course, in Benue State, most of them said they will continue to get into the FCT unless the government finds like a common ground for them. And by common ground, they mean where they can stay, depending on when whatever issue is being experienced there is resolved. So you cannot transfer 50,000 or 100,000 to a person, hold on, and expect it to be easy for such a person to relocate their life and their businesses from there. You have said that every year you have 3 levels, if I get you correctly. You have the yellow, you have the red. No, the red is the last, right? You have the green, and then you have the red. When it's at yellow, there's no cause for alarm. When it gets to green, no cause for alarm. When it gets to yellow, you start to put measures in place and you don't let it get to red. But every single year, we record the same number of casualties that we do.
Even more.
And even more. In 2025 alone, we've had ridiculous number and statistics of people that have become victims of flood and some of these natural disasters. And so I see you trying to put it more on the citizens and less on the bodies that are responsible for there should be a policy to migrate these people from where they are to a safer place until the floods are over. Do you think that money that is being transferred to them through the cash register or however it's being called is enough to make a person relocate from where they are into somewhere else?
All right, so good question. We aren't asking people to just relocate permanently, right? It's a temporary relocation. Relocation zones are also identified, and basically necessities are provided while they are there. Hospital facility, health facilities, good wash systems, toilets, and even food is provided, security as well. They are also provided with, I think, enough cash to ensure.
How enough? How much is the cash?
So I am not so sure about the figures, and I don't want to basically misguide.
And it's per family or per individual?
Per family. Right?
Okay.
They are actually given sufficient amount of money based on the last strategic meetings, right?
So we want a statistics of the amount. We want a range. So you don't necessarily need to say it's 50,000 naira.
So
because you said it's sufficient.
When you say sufficient, we need to know a range.
So within 200 to 250,000 naira.
That's sufficient for a family of how many?
So it's not.
Is it depending on the number of people in a family?
It's until the flooding recedes, you see. Right? So it's not like we're asking you to go away from your zone permanently. I mean, what is more important than life? And just as I mentioned, the anticipatory action framework, I could speak for the anticipatory action framework that also have everybody together, every board, National Emergency Management Agency, the Nigerian Space Research and Development Agency, NISA, Nigerian Hydrological Service Agency, and NIMET, Nigerian Meteorological Agency, and a lot of international organizations as well who have been supportive, UN OCHA for coordination and all of that. The framework, as I mentioned, we just get up in the first meeting was in September, right? And it's been a year of strategizing, of ensuring that everything is being captured in this framework, of creating awareness and simulation exercise. It might not be at its perfect state yet, but trust me, it has the good of Nigerians in store. It has the good of Nigerians at heart. That's as much as I can say about the framework and the strategies that have been employed. For the previous years, as I mentioned, I cannot comment because I wasn't part of that disaster management endeavors. However, for this year, as I mentioned, the impact of the flooding has been enormous. And just as I mentioned, every life is sacred, and we regret the loss of everyone. And it's actually really sad to see. But it's interesting to note that these numbers aren't just getting triggered just in Nigeria alone. It's all over the world. You could tell that you have catered for, maybe when you have planned and catered for maybe 100 people based on the statistics of the past for events that you have in your home, and then you get 500 people or 1,000 guests. Guests are a good thing, right? However, these overwhelming, you didn't prepare for them, right? So I'm not saying there isn't adequate preparation, but I'm saying that climate actions, right, and then the disasters as it's coming with climate change as it is, right, is not something we have planned. So it's not basically casted in stone. It's a very flexible framework that we intend to improve every now and then. We see what's happening definitely. As I speak to you, there's actually a meeting going on, right, on anticipatory action framework, and this intend to include basically every other state of the federation. Initially, when we started, you could tell not everybody would key in, but right now, for the places that we have concentrated and for the impact it has had in the lives of these people, a lot of state governors are seeing it as a good thing and something they would want to be a part of. And trust me, there are conversations going on to ensure that everything comes up.
You talked about preparedness, basically. You gave a scenario. Maybe you prepare for 100 persons, and now the outcome gives you 500 people. And you've mentioned the climate change as one of those factors as it is. And again, you said from September last year up until now, there's been meetings, strategies, and all of that. Now, in those meetings and strategic flows, you know as well that there's a thing called the climate change, which will eventually affect some of these happenings in the country. Why didn't the organization put in the factor or factor in climate change as one of the reasons that could increase the number of people that will be dependent on the anticipatory framework as it is?
Yeah, good question, right? So as I mentioned, we are starting, right? And basically the importance is being felt and people are keying in. There's a lot in place, right? There is a lot. Before now, one of the issues we were having was as Nigerians, we feel like there's limited resources to ensure that these things are put in place. So how about we wait and be sure of where the flooding is happening before we then go and put resources? Now, one thing with the anticipatory action is even when these measures are put in place, for instance, sandbags, we provide for sandbags, put sandbags just to reduce the impact of maybe flooding on maybe a building or an infrastructure, right, to reduce it. So imagine having all of those sandbags filled and then the disaster did not come. Plus, it's a major plus, right? It's no wastage because life is sacred.
Right.
However, it's a lot of money as opposed to the reaction one. So it's an initiative, commendable, and we are trying to convince people to see how commendable it is, so that they can
what people,
key in.
state government,
right, and other international organizations. Because the truth is, an individual, a country, cannot manage disaster on its own. It has to do with everybody. One organization cannot do it alone. So now we're rallying around and saying, you see, this thing can actually save us. It can, and it includes even building resilient buildings. Flooding could be happening and you'd be in your building and all of this won't happen. It's a lot of money to build these infrastructures, silos that can withstand the impact of the disaster and all of that. It's the framework, very promising, but within a year, you cannot put in place all of the infrastructures and the system, right, to mitigate the impact totally.
Right.
So I was the next year's coming, I promise.
So I was going to ask a question now about the buildings.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we have talked about, how do they call this?
The IDPs?
Not just the IDPs.
Moving to secondary
buildings,
schools?
No, buildings that can withstand flood.
Okay.
Because they are supposed to be surveyors that are supposed to check buildings. Because why I think mostly that the reaction from most of this team is reactionary, not precautionary, is the fact that these buildings are supposed to be checked before they are erected. You'd see in the FCT many of such buildings, they have gotten to lintel level and then you put a cross, demolish. Where were you when it was at the foundational level? And this is the same thing with most of these communities. These buildings are not properly surveyed before they are erected. What are you doing to mitigate this? Because this, when we say mitigating the crisis, it's an encapsulation of so many things. Number one, the map that you draw at NASDA to be able to identify prone areas. Number two, checking the feasibility check for these buildings as to which can withstand these buildings, and advice for demolition early enough. Because I think that the precautionary measures are not enforced. You can't say, oh, this place is a flood-prone area, exit this place, without policies or laws that enforce that these people must be moved away from there. You see, so this is, what are you doing to ensure that there are strict compliance measures for both the people that you are trying to help from this flood? That's one. Number two, forecasting says, with forecasting saying over 1,200 communities are at high risk in 2025. Now, how effective is the Nigerian early warning system? Do they reach out to these rural communities, or they focus on the urban communities alone? Because if you see the statistics, most of the places that this flood has happened, they're in rural communities. The urban areas somewhat are excluded from this. What about those communities?
All right. Thank you very much. And I'll start by answering the second question. Basically, this is all true. The statistics, all truth. And yeah, unfortunately, the rural communities bear the brunt a lot of the times. But you also need to understand that some of the key factors that affect them is, number one, maybe proximity to water channels, right? They cite their source of livelihood, basically agriculture, so that they can irrigate their farmlands and provide their cultivation with water. And this in itself is risks, right? But they take the risks. Even when you tell them that this can't basically work, or it's at a very risk-prone area, they go on to do what they do. And I'm not putting the blame on them, right? It's all right.
Because I was going to
I know you were going there, right? I'm not putting the blame on them, right? And that's fine. Now, because their communities are close to these flood-prone areas, they get affected, they get impacted. We, on our own side, have decided that these things are reoccurring here. We have these meetings in the past here in Abuja without involving the people who are affected. What we began to do instead was to take this workshop simulation exercise to their zones. As I mentioned, we were in Adamawa just last week, we were in Kogi, we were in Nasarawa at some point, and basically this to sensitize people on the impact and how they should act, and just everything. We try as much as possible to ensure that they are in a lot of these workshops. And earlier on I mentioned that the bulletins are also translated to their own languages. And not just that, we try as much as possible to include their traditional leaders, rulers, religious homes, institutions, people they listen to, people who are educated as well, that could understand what we are trying to say, and then they could basically break it down a lot. So not everybody communicates RICS. We also try as much as possible that the RICS communicators also understand how they can communicate to these locals. Send text messages, put radio jingles, dramatize these adverts, cartoonize them, and as well, basically make provisions. Just as I mentioned, we are utilizing the National Social Register to ensure that the vulnerable populations are met with cash transfers to help them basically migrate from where they are to a safer zone until the impact reduces. So it's a lot of effort. We are also including organizations such as the National Orientation Agency, who have offices all across the country, NEMA, FEMA, and NIMET. All of them are passing on this information through their offices, through the local offices as well, just so that this information can reach them greatly. As I mentioned, it has been a lot of work. We are strategizing, and everything would come in place soon.
We're hoping that we don't want hope, we want proactivity. Because I was going to say we hope that everything falls in place, but we cannot move with hope.
No, we cannot.
We have to move with structures. You have to set solid structures in place, because I don't want to say in 2026 again we'll have the same conversation, because we always do. 23, 24, 25, we always have these conversations about flood, and the areas that are prone to flood always get flooded every year. So what's the precautionary measure we're taking there?
Some sort of assurance from me to you. I'll tell you, it definitely will be different. It's been remarkable work done from all of the key stakeholders, key actors. I mean, we aren't resting at all. We're ensuring that we are trying to ensure that Nigerians' lives, properties, and livelihoods are safe and sound. Come 2026, we won't be having these conversations. I'm sure you all will be.
Sounds like a campaign.
We'll have that on record. But yes, we're already past the half of the hour. We'll go out on a very short break, and we'll get back and keep up with the conversation. Please do stay with us.